if you don't feel like to be on. And then after the main talk, we'll turn off again the recording. So thank you so much for being here tonight. It's so nice to see so familiar faces and so many new faces. My name is Denise. I've been with CAS for the past 2 years, and I'm also a board member, a CAS board member. So tonight we're going to talk, the main topic tonight is about organizing. But before we get into that, I'd like to give a little recap about last month's meeting. On the last month's meeting, renters meeting, we talk about different housing programs and services the city of Somerville is spending money on. We also asked you which housing programs you believe the city should give more focus to and spend their money on. I am happy to report that we have a meeting scheduled with Mayor Valentine for the end of this month. There, we will educate her on the needs of renters, sharing your feedback on which housing programs you would like to see receiving more money. So at tonight's meeting, we are going to talk about tenants associations and how to organize with your neighbors to make sure your landlord respects your rights as a tenant. So the big question is, why should we organize? And Sam, if you don't mind sharing this, thank you. So why should we organize? I would like, before we start to talk about organizing, I would like to do a little exercise with everyone here. So I'd like to ask everyone here to close their eyes for a minute. So with your eyes closed, I'd like for you to imagine you living in a house or building where the situation is completely different from now. Instead of your landlord controlling you and the conditions you are living in, they have to answer to your needs, to your requests. You and your neighbors have all come together. Your landlord treats you with dignity by listening to you and your requests. The conditions in your building are safe and clean. Everything has been fixed and brought up to code. And now you know your landlord or management company will listen to your concerns. Plus, you can stay in your apartment. Oh boy, wouldn't that be nice? Now open your eyes. Let's all go back and open our eyes and go back to reality. We all know many landlords don't listen and don't care about their tenants. They see housing as profit only and not as a human right. They don't take care of their property. Sorry, my phone is beeping. I'm turning off. They don't take care about their properties. They intimidate their tenants. And on top of that, they keep increasing the rent. Some of you may have tried many times to contact your landlord, but they either ignore you or put pressure on you to move out. The place where you live right now may not be in good shape. However, you probably can't afford to move to a new house. The moving costs are either too high, or it's likely that the rent in your neighborhood is out of reach. Plus, most of us really don't want to leave the community we've called home for so long. But what other choice do we have? Our city keeps changing and not in good and fair way. We are seeing new developments happening on every corner. New shops, new restaurants, luxury houses, new subways stations, and new people, especially young professionals who can afford to pay more for housing. This phenomenon is called gentrification, something we have seen and experienced here in Somerville for quite some time. But we hear a lot of the words gentrification, but really, what is that? What is gentrification and what does that bring to our community? So basically, gentrification is a process of neighborhood change where the wealthy invest money in poor urban community, normally communities of color, for amenities and services like more and better parks, public transportation, community spaces, etc. These amenities are built for the community that lives in the area. However, with these new amenities, the property value goes up, as does rent, utilities, and food. And the community that was supposed to enjoy all these new improvements ends up being kicked out of their neighborhood. Sadly, with gentrification comes displacement, which happens when landlords or developers decide they can profit by flipping homes, displacing low-income residents so they can renovate apartments and charge a lot more for rent, or build new condos for wealthier residents. And sadly, that neighborhood lose their culture and flavor of the community. Two major examples here in Somerville are the changes in Assembly Row. Before we used to call Assembly Square, but now is Assembly Row, the new development, and Union Square neighborhoods. We all are seeing the change and living this change. But so what can we do? And the answer is organize. But what does organizing looks like? One of the most powerful ways to organize is to build a tenants association, also known as tenants union or tenants alliance. There is no specific formula to organize a tenants alliance. Renters can start the process by simply talking to their neighbors and fellow renters to gauge interest. Once you and your neighbors are taking action together, you are a tenant association. Unions can be formed in a single building or complex by the same landlord, or across multiple buildings in a neighborhood with different landlords, or even across the entire city or state. Right here in the city of Somerville, we have two great examples of tenant associations that were recently organized here in our city. The first one is La Court Tenants Union, formed not only by its residents, but also by neighbors from different zip codes. The other example, more recent one, is Mortimer Place, with 3 families getting together and fighting for the rights as tenants. But one thing you should always remember, organizing shouldn't stop when an immediate problem is fixed. As a group, tenants can identify systematic problems in their building. They can see patterns of neglect or harassment and demand long-term solutions that prevent problems instead of just dealing with them once they occur. Ultimately, tenants organize to get power. Even though a landlord owns the building, a small group of tenants can build enough power to challenge their landlord when necessary. As of now, the state of Massachusetts does not have rent control. That was in 1994. What that means? That means that landlords and management companies can, and they do, raise rents as high as they want. They can refuse to renew lease and even start an eviction process. That being said, in order for the rent increase to be valid, the landlord needs to wait until the end of your lease, if you have one, to be able to increase your rent, or give you a 30-day notice if you are renting month to month, also known as tenant at will. Landlords also cannot evict you. Only a judge can. Again, landlords cannot evict you. If landlord knocks on your door and say, I need you out, or send you a letter, it's not enough. He cannot evict you. Only a judge can. If your landlord does try to raise your rent too high or evict you, organizing with your neighbors is often the best way to address these issues. When we work together, we have the power in our community to determine what happens in our neighborhood. Some cities and states also provide additional protections, but even these are more effective if tenants are organized. Organizing gives tenants more power to draw attention to problems and get them resolved. It's like, look at the fish in the picture, the big one. We are all together, this bunch of little fish. Let's call the tenants, all organized with the other fish running after the landlord. And that's what it is. When we organize, we have this power. The great news is that you don't have to have any legal documentation of residency in this country or anything else to form a tenant association. The important thing is that residents support each other. If you are at risk of eviction, are facing an unfair rent increase, have poor conditions in your house, or your landlord is threatening you, you can start addressing these problems by organizing a tenant association in the building where you live. I am now going to pass to a friend, Veronica, who will share with us organizing tools to form a tenant association and our legal rights to do so.
Nós temos de fazer isso. Good evening, everybody. My name is Veronica. Thank you, Denise. Now I'm going to talk about the second part of this. Organizing doesn't have to be complicated. Tenants organization means you meet with your neighbors, decide your shared goals, create a plan, and act together. You don't need to do that alone. If you're interested in organizing with your neighbors, contact Cass. We can help you understand your rights and support you during the process. Now, let's talk a little bit about how each of the steps can be done. Number one, meet your neighbors. That requires trust. If you can, it's good to start building relationships before something bad is actually happening. If you don't have everybody's contact information, you can just knock on their door, start talking about when you want to meet. This can seem a little too personal for some people, but you need to have courage to say hello and ask them to meet. Try to find a time that works for everybody. It could The meeting could be at a park or in somebody's garage or even in your apartment or in a nearby cafe like Dunkin' Donuts. The first meeting, talk about what you want. Talk about, for example, you want to demand better maintenance in the building. You want to talk about the rent increase, the inaccessible increases. Ask everybody to share their experiences and problems. Decide on what your shared goals are going to be. And then in the first or second meeting, create an agreement about what everybody wants to get done. Maybe what you want is that the landlord be more responsible about maintenance. Maybe you want to negotiate a rent increase so nobody has to move. But remember that it's good to have a plan B. In other words, what you want to get done if you're not able to reach your shared goal. If you need to change addresses, look for an affordable apartment. And don't forget that CAS's tenancy program, defense program can help you with that. Create a group plan. You've probably noticed by now that it's more likely that you'll have success if you work together with your neighbors instead of working by yourself. The first step the CAS recommends to tenants is to set down your issues in writing, send a letter to the landlord, and ask for a meeting. It becomes much more powerful if that letter is sent by several people instead of just one. An excellent way to get support in the community is to set up some kind of community action to get the press involved, to let the landlord know that the community is watching. It's more probable that the landlord will act in favor of tenants if he feels pressured by the community. Other tactics includes asking people to talk to the city alderman, create petitions for people to sign, and then hand that to the landlord. Remember that the plan can move, it can change, and CAS is here to help you create more effective strategies and to bring the landlord to the table to talk. Acting together. That's exactly what it sounds like. Implement your plan. Write a letter. Get signatures from our neighbors. Inform the community about your efforts. If your group is dealing with very high rent increases, it's important to bring the landlord to the table. That would be a great victory. The landlords are probably going to ignore you and they're going to resist at first, but don't forget the CAS can help your group increase the pressure necessary so that the landlord will see and sit with you. When this happens, that means your group effectively started to build some power. Although an action like this may seem frightening, it's important to remember you're not alone when you join with the community and your neighbors. The landlord may try to divide you or offer solutions to some of you and not to others, but it's important that you remain united. Never forget that we have each other's help. One of the reasons many people don't get organized with their neighbors is that they're afraid. Sometimes they're afraid that it'll cause more problems if they take action. Other times they're afraid of being seen as troublemakers, maybe by the landlords or even by the community as a whole. Who benefits from that fear? That fear is completely understandable, but you have to remember that the landlords benefit when we allow that fear to keep us from organizing, because they're the only ones that will actually win in that situations. All tenants in Massachusetts have the legal right to organize with their neighbors, regardless of their immigration status. It is against the law for a landlord to try to retaliate against you and your neighbors for organizing. One of the things that is most important is you have to document everything. Of course that we know that just because retaliation is legal doesn't mean that you may not be threatened by your landlord. So it's very important to make sure that you document what you're doing in writing throughout all the stages of organization. If you meet with the landlord, write an email or a summary of the conversations and actions so that everything is documented. Set up a schedule of what the person said or did something different when the tenants organization took measures as a group. Just remember, do everything out in the open. Your best defense is having the community knowing what's going on. Sometimes people don't want to attract attention, but it's better to stand on the light than to hide in the shadows. You'll have more chances of success because people in the community will be watching the situation. You won't be alone. Organizing yourself with your neighbors is, if that's something that interests you now or maybe in the future, we encourage you to contact CASA's community organizers. They can help you and your neighbors set up community meetings and can support you independent of your group's incomes. CAS can also get you some legal assistance for free. If you want to know more about legal rights for tenants, you can access the link here that's showing up on the slide and get more information. Now I'm going to let Denise speak again. She's going to make some introductions.
Thank you, Veronica. So that was a part of our main topic about organizing. I know it's a lot of information and a lot to process, but again, like Veronica said, if you have any question, contact anyone from CAS, our team here, Camila, Sam, Fabiano, Isabel, any call. And now we have a very special part in the meeting. Two residents from the Mortimer place, the one that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. So they just formed, not even 2 months ago, I would say a month and a half ago, they just formed a tenants association in their building. And they are here to share this story. I'm going to pass, their name is Livia and Veronice. I'm going to pass to Livia first, and then Veronice is going to share after.
Boa noite.
Good evening. My name is Livia Tadano. I live in Somerville. It's been 17 years I've been here, 10 years in this apartment at 6 Mortimer Place. I'd like to share with you my story. In the beginning of July, just like the rest of the tenants, I was caught by surprise by a $900 rent increase. I had to either do that or leave by August 31st. That represents almost 53% of a rent increase. It's an abusive increase and it's impossible to pay because my salary is still the same. The property manager that communicated the increase said it was not negotiable and didn't give us any alternative to negotiate with the landlord. Besides that, the building has several problems, which is another reason to consider that increase unjust. With the help of CAS, we sent a letter to Mr. Edson Silva so that we could set up a negotiation meeting, but he ignored all our attempts. Together with my neighbors in CAS, Island Charters, and the alderman of Somerville, and the supporters, we were able to get the owner, Mr. Edson, meet with us to negotiate in relationship to the increase in the rent. This, of course, after an online petition and a demonstration in front of the building so that Mr. Edson Silva would agree to meet with us. At that demonstration, we had politicians present, members of CAS, press coverage, and several supporters of our cause. We had 2 meetings with Mr. Edson, and we talked about the rent. We proposed 35.3% and to renew the contract for a year. We haven't had an answer yet from the landlord, but we've been paying the rent for August and September with the value of the old contract. I want to give this example here and say that union makes strength, and because together we're stronger. Thank you very much.
Olá,
Hi.
vocês podem me ouvir?
Are you able to hear me?
Então, meu nome é
So,
Veronice.
my name is Veronice Cruz.
No terceiro piso do
I live
prédio
on the
Mortimer.
third floor at Mortar Place.
Como muitos aqui, eu fui pega de surpresa com o aumento de
Like many people here, I was caught by surprise with a 62% rent increase,
ou a exigência para sair do apartamento
or
no
the
final
alternative of leaving at the end of the month
do mês de agosto.
of August.
Quando eu fui comunicada, não tive a
When
oportunidade
I was
de
informed of this,
negociar,
there was no
ficar no
opportunity to
eu
negotiate
gostaria de continuar morando no local.
if I wanted to continue living there.
É a primeira vez que eu me sinto em casa. Eu
That
fiz
place is the first time I
conexões
felt at home. I made connections there.
na cidade, eu não queria ter que sair de
I didn't want to have to
Somerville,
move out of
não poder
Somerville,
pagar aluguel com aumento de 60%.
but I didn't want to pay 60% rent increase either.
Dia após eu ter recebido essa
So
ligação,
one day
com a
after getting that
eu
news,
encontrei minhas Lívia e Lusitânia na
I
saída do prédio.
met up with Livia and Lusitania at the building entrance.
E eu resolvemos ali que ficaríamos
So
juntas,
we decided right then and there that we would band together
faríamos acordo com o landlord.
and we would try to get an agreement with the landlord.
A Lívia fez contato dizendo que havia uma associação disposta a nos ajudar.
So Livia told me that there was an association that was ready to help us.
Participaríamos pela primeira vez da reunião dos moradores.
We would
Como
participate
essa
for the
que
first time in a renters meeting like this one.
E dos moradores de Somerville que nos apoiaram. Nos sentimos mais fortes para tentar
And with the
acordo.
support of the Somerville residents, we felt
Para
stronger.
morar. Tinha
Felt like we would try to make an
imenso.
agreement.
Por
It was
isso,
a big
agradeço
challenge.
Cass por estar nos ajudando nessa.
So we thank Cass for helping us in this cause.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Berenice y Livia, por compartir su historia.
Thank you very much, Berenice and Livia, for sharing your stories. It's very inspiring, especially after Denise and Veronica's presentation. We feel a little bit more inspired to organize ourselves, and we see that we can really achieve things when we do this, especially when we unite with our neighbors. But I wanted to know if anyone has questions, any questions about the stories that we heard from Berenice and Livia, or about the topics that we discussed. Do anyone have